This conference will now be recorded.
Well, good afternoon. This is JoAnn Forrester, the Empress of Biz, bringing you another edition with Sal Acosta, the Duke of Business. Uh,
I
and
bet
we
you
are,
didn't know that, Neysha.
I did not.
well, at least I haven't promoted you to king yet. So
As long as you don't
You
cut off
gotta
my
start
head, we're
somewhere.
good.
we are we are having a post-holiday show, and I'm hoping that everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And we're going to be talking business with an acquaintance, a business. Uh, you guys in partnership, or are you guys just networking partners? With Neysha, who's going to tell us going to tell us about her. And you've been in business about 3.5 years in your own small business, right, Neysha?
That is correct. This past November 3rd, it was my 3rd-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Big milestone.
Yes, it is. I've been in business over 30 some years, and I was 5 when I started. So let's just leave it there.
Obviously.
And between Sal and I, we have got at least 60 some years of business experience of do's and don'ts. And in fact, we're going to have a special show on Friday the 13th, part of a series of business horror stories that we have both watched or have experienced. So, welcome, Neysha, and
Thank you.
tell us more about your business, Precixa, or
Precisa, yeah. Precisa is a Pittsburgh-based consulting firm that focuses on partnering with organizational leaders and guiding them through transformational change. So mainly in the operations area, we assist organizations transition from where they are now to where they need to be to achieve their strategic priorities.
you
Neysha, let me ask you a question real quick because this comes up a lot with some of the other folks that we talk to or interview. So companies come in all shapes and sizes. What is your sweet spot maybe in terms of size of the types of companies that you can engage with and help the most?
Um, so we are industry agnostic, and obviously we evaluate where we can provide the most value mutually, and we have found that um, the medium-sized organizations or departments of 1,000 employees and below, it is our sweet spot. It is the area where they are craving for all that help. They cannot necessarily afford the big names in the consulting industry. However, they have strong goals, strong dreams, strong vision for their companies, and have demonstrated some maturity to take them to that next level. So our sweet spot is organizations and/or companies of 1,000 employees and below. I don't take a look at revenue because, as you know from your experience, if you have a technology company, your revenue can be in the millions of dollars. However, if you're a manufacturing company producing a particular item, your revenue can be a little bit less. And we are all about empowering the organization and their leaders to perform better.
Okay.
so you really concentrate on the 99% of small business is small. You're really concentrating on that 1% in America and around the world that is a very specific target audience. Uh, your customer base, is this international?
No, it is on a national level. We have had a couple of engagements outside of the state. But the bulk of our clients, about 85 to 90% of our clients, are currently within the region, right here in Western Pennsylvania, so right here in our backyard.
How did you end up in Pittsburgh?
That's an interesting story, JoAnn. So I started my career in Puerto Rico at a medical device company, and after about 7, 8 years with them, I was promoted to the headquarters in New Jersey. That's how I landed from Puerto Rico in the U.S. And then I met my husband to be. He actually was living in Pittsburgh at that point in time for about 7 years already. And he loved Pittsburgh. His business is based on clients. My business at that point in time, there was no business. I just needed a desk in a organization to work. So it made sense for me to move and come to the region and join him.
Hey, Neysha, let me ask you, I'm going to ask you maybe two questions at the same time. One is, what did you find was the biggest challenge, the biggest hurdle, the biggest problem to integrating yourself as a business person into the Pittsburgh business community? Um, and two, because I know this is true also, you have you're obviously Latino from Puerto Rico, and I know from your background that you have a lot of interest in helping the Latino community, and I am too, by the way, full disclosure. I also know that there's not a lot of us in Pittsburgh. Um, was that a problem? Not a problem? So those two things related?
So I would tell you, I prior to working on my own, having my own business, I spent 20 years in Fortune companies. So when I arrived to Pittsburgh, I entered into another Fortune company. I would say that within my particular organizations, whatever that organization was at that point in time, it was not incredibly difficult to adapt to Pittsburgh because, like a typical work, you go to work, spend most of your day there, and come back at home, and start your routine, dinner and stuff. So. It's very interesting your question, because this is something that I was speaking to someone last week. The Pittsburgh region and the whole region, Western Pennsylvania, has evolved tremendously. The amount of Latino population has grown incredibly over the past 15 years. So adaptation at the beginning, I do have to say that it was in the social aspect, not on the work aspect, but the social was difficult because there's not that many, forget about Hispanics, there was not that many minorities in Pittsburgh at all. So, it was difficult in the ability for me to relate to what was happening in the social scene. So it took some time. It definitely were many nights where I was asking myself, what have I gotten myself into? But I have always been very curious. So I just turned myself into exploring the city, exploring the history of the city, where was that coming from, and that helped. Now, over the last 3 years, owning my own business, I have faced something similar as it relates to the professional world. So the social aspect is great, but being a new company with a new name and a new face in Pittsburgh, nobody knew me. So it's difficult for people to trust that I will be able to deliver the services that my company offer. Um, However, I apply the same approach. I turning curiosity into research. I went into the different organizations, started to volunteer my time, started to develop content that definitely attracted some of initial curiosity towards what I had to offer.
You know, what you're talking about, when we started our business over 35 years ago, really, less than 5% of businesses were owned by women. So, and the field that I was in, because I was in the steel, did consulting in the steel industry. I did consulting in construction. I did a lot of consulting in male-dominated industries and with police. Um, so I'm there, and while I have two male partners, they're older than me, and they're sending the kid out to get the business, you know.
Yeah.
um, and I had some very interesting experiences, and I learned that if someone gave me a hard time, I just got sweeter and nicer to them until they finally had to deal with me.
I think that's the perfect approach, Joan. It happens the same in corporate America. You come with a new idea, with an innovation project, and you have to convince someone in a higher up chair that there's a value proposition, right? The only difference is that now you have to sell for yourself, and there's no backing in terms of the overhead that typically protects you. But I can totally relate to what you're saying.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I remember when I started working, and I'm not going to date myself, but this will date myself anyway. There was a saying of nobody ever got fired by buying IBM. You know, we talk a lot
Yeah.
about the power of brands and reputation and so on and so forth, but back in that time period, if you were an IT manager, they may have even been called something different back then. Um, and you bought IBM, then it may not have been the optimal, but your job was secure.
Oh, absolutely.
Unfortunately, when you're a small business owner, you don't have the power of that brand or that reputation behind you that makes you the safe choice, right?
Absolutely. And we have to understand as small businesses that some of those people may be undergoing, because I have been on that side, hiring consultants and hiring small businesses as well, maybe under the pressures of budget, credibility, reputation for the organization, reputation for the department. So, those pressures are truly real. So until you can build a brand about yourself, and that takes time, it's going to be nearly impossible to break through the market in a quick manner.
Hey, let me ask you one maybe last question, and I'll turn it back to JoAnn. But when you think about your consulting practice and what you've done so far in a couple of years, if you look out, I'm going to say 10 years, how do you see your company evolving? Meaning, having more work outside of Western Pennsylvania, having employees, what is sort of that vision 10 years out for what you're doing now and what you've done sort of leveraging the 3 years so far?
It is so interesting that you asked me that question, Sal, because I started the business as a process improvement consulting firm. Because technically that's what I have been doing for the prior 20 years in corporate America. And I see the value, I see the benefits, I see the return on investment rather quickly. And in just 3 years, my business has evolved in terms of a more holistic umbrella that covers transformational change. And the reason for that is that uh, sometimes because of the pressures of the economy and trying to maintain your company afloat, you forget about humanizing the work. So we can do all of these improvements for your organization, but if you don't have a strong commitment to your employees, to your team, to building your organization from the inside out, it's going to be very difficult to reap the benefits, the full benefits. You can reap some benefits, but it's going to be difficult to reap the full benefits of the organization. So I have to tell you that I was more in the structure, skill set, and kind of on the organizational path to success, and now is a more holistic concept. So my business in just 3 years have evolved a lot. Over the next couple of years, I already have started to get subcontractors. I would like to transform those subcontractors that are absolutely outstanding into general employees, and definitely provide services, additional volume into nationally, more national contracts and territories of the U.S. Right now, I'm not looking for international business quite just yet. I am open to the possibilities, obviously. It will just be something, because this is what I believe and what I preach in my companies that I work with, more into the gradual growth, so that that growth is sustainable and you don't crash under pressure. And that's the same thing that I will apply for myself.
When my field has been, my playground has been small business, and I have worked for corporations, and we agreed to disagree. Well, one client, a steel company, would fire me every 6 months, and then they'd have to hire me back and pay me more. I love that. I got more money. But what is the big difference for you owning your own business and working in the corporate environment?
I will have to say flexibility, JoAnn. That's just pure and simple what it comes down to me. I was working on typically on enterprise-wide programs that cover multiple areas of the different organizations that I was part of. And so the amount of hours of work have always been insane, incredibly long hours. I would say I have to say the benefits for me have been flexibility to be able to do it in my own terms. Have been incredibly beneficial. On the on the opposite side, and Sal, you mentioned this clearly when you were talking about IBM being the safe option, that you wouldn't get, fired if you pick IBM, no matter how good or bad it was. I think that rings true for me, because at the end of the day, I don't have that overhead backing of the resources that are in an organization to basically help my decision. I have had to create my own network of people that serve as that backing, meaning my retainer lawyers, my retainer accountants, my retainer admin professionals, etc. But typically, you can operate a higher and bigger and more, in a way, secure path, because you have all of this backing. In here, you kind of have it, but you have to create it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, Nation. This is something that actually JoAnn and I disagree on. Surprise, surprise. But I want to get your take on this as sort of an independent third party. So you've worked for Fortune 500 companies and sort of, multinational roles, very high level roles. And now you're starting your own company as an entrepreneur. Now, obviously, in your particular case, being an entrepreneur, you need a very specialized skill set. So in that sense, I'll honestly say you're not the typical entrepreneur. But when you think of a typical entrepreneur that doesn't require that specialized skill set, maybe they want to open up a bakery or a car dealership or something like that. Do you think your background experience, what you learned working for these Fortune 500 companies, actually helps you now be a small business owner itself and be an entrepreneur itself? Or quite honestly, was that just wasted time that doesn't really apply? And you wish, hey, you know what? I wish I had done this 30 years ago because I would have had the flexibility. I'd be 30 years down the road developing my own personal brand. How do you fall on that?
Um, I will fall in the middle. I am a very firm believer that your life trajectory prepares you for the next step in your life, whether that's personal or professional. I think in my particular case, like you well said, I needed that skill set to take that and help improve organization. So that's in just my life, right? But I, it depends on what's your passion. Because if your passion, to your own example, is to bake cookies, and you neglected that passion to pursue a more secure corporate job, obviously you have been wasting whatever amount of years in corporate America and not nurturing your passion. In my particular case, the challenge was that I have always been successful in my roles in Fortune companies. I believe completely in what I do, completely. I have seen the benefits. It doesn't matter the area of the organization that I am applying this concepts and skill set. However, I needed to translate that into what was important for the smaller organizations. And I think at the beginning, I relied too much on my knowledge, experience, and success in large organizations. So I was not able to connect the dots for small businesses that were typically pursuing a particular passion. Uh, so the reason why I say I fall in the middle is that in terms of application, I needed that corporate experience to be successful now. But in terms of how do I portray the benefits and the value, I had to learn that through lots of bumps and bruises along the way to be able to connect to the market that I wanted to really connect. I was very successful to selling my services in Fortune company at the beginning, but that's not who I wanted to work because I really wanted to help medium-sized organizations thrive. Um, on the other hand, the big organizations want to buy from the big names in the industry. So it was a lose-lose situation for the both of us. I was able to connect, but they were looking to higher level organizations. So it just depends in terms of the typical entrepreneur. What are you doing it for? If you're doing it because you believe in your with all the passion in your heart in your product, and your product has no relation to what you've been doing previously, probably is going to be wasted time. However, if it is sort of connected, definitely, I think there's always a building block. Sorry, I couldn't have your dispute solved.
One of the things that I noticed that you are is an author, and the title of your book is A Little Blue Book, A Girl's Guide to Owning Your Own Professional Development, and then a helpful guide for the ambitious and practical woman. I love that last line, ambitious and practical woman. I think that's kind of sums me up.
Awesome.
So tell us about your book, please.
So, JoAnn, I think at the beginning of this conversation, you covered a specific comment that you have been in male-dominated industries, and you're there and consistent and basically persistent until they have to listen to you, right? Um, and I think that was the essence for the book. I am an engineer. A lot of my projects throughout my career have been related or hardcore technology implementations. And that path can be lonely. Not lonely because there's no people around you, but lonely because it's not typical to see at that point in time, right? Specifically, now you can see it more, but at that point in time, it's not typical to see a successful woman running the show. So you kind of are playing by what works for you and what's not.
Right.
And oftentimes, you're trying to, specifically in technology, you're trying to model behaviors from males that have been successful. The problem is that when you start to build and model behaviors that do not necessarily resonate with you, but you see that they have been successful, you start to build layers over yourself. And the higher up that you go, the less of a safety net you have beneath to protect you from bad decisions. So if your decisions eventually as a senior vice president, as a vice president, as a director, do not come from what you truly believe and come instead from model behaviors, you're more prone to fail because eventually something is going to break and you don't have anything to model it because it's not coming from you. So the purpose of the book was to provide guidance that I wish I had a long time ago
Mhm.
to be able to take control and ownership of my career and surround yourself with individuals that can provide not necessarily guidance in terms of the specific uh, um, skill set or industry that you're in, but a more rounded view so that you can have a more holistic approach to your professional growth. That's the intent of the book. I did it short and sweet. It is only, I would say, for a fast reader, maybe 90 minutes to 2 hour read. And I did it because I wanted something to fit in the purse of a person. It's intended to be a working book so that you can refer to it and continue to work on your personal growth based on what motivates you, what energizes you, and what you're passionate about.
Hey, Neysha, let me ask you a question. And when you were in your corporate careers, and maybe even now, by the way, um, did you have a mentor? Was it male? Was it female? Did they approach you? Did you approach them? And is that something that you would recommend to other people?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I did not have a mentor per se. Again, I am not resentful about it. It is just that I didn't saw anyone having a mentor in the field that I was in. So at the beginning of your career, you kind of model the behavior of people that have been successful. And that's something that I talk in the book. I wish I would have had a mentor. I wish I would have enlisted. Now, I quickly learned. So as soon as I joined my second large organization, I got myself a mentor. Basically, I attended meetings and I saw different behaviors of people that I truly admire and behaviors that I'm like, oh, I wish I would have that swiftness in the decision making or that poise in terms of making difficult decisions or addressing difficult conversations. Let me invite that person for coffee. So I arm myself with a complete board of directors. And that's something that definitely I address in the book. And the reason for that is that sometimes your mentor is subject specific. And as you continue to grow in your career, you may run into the case that you're going to grow out of that mentor. So basically have a subject specific mentor. I had overall company dynamics mentor that may not necessarily be from my department or my area. I had an industry mentor, someone from outside my organization that provided me guidance on how the industry was progressing through times and with innovation, etc. And then I had a person that I admire because of maybe work-life balance capabilities and be able to stand for her personal time. And I had coffee with that person too. So I arm myself with this complete set of people that provided me different type of guidance throughout my career, depending on what I needed. And something extra that started to happen once you start to perform with the help of that surrounding people. If you think about a board of directors, the board of directors is guiding the CEO to make decisions from different perspectives. And I had that for myself, different perspective. Once I started to perform better, advocates started to come. Advocates are people that basically cheer you on, sometimes without you even realizing. And one story that I talk in the book is that I had a very high power lawyer in the one of the organizations that I work with. And one day we were having coffee, and he said, "Hey, the people in the 30th floor were tossing around ideas to run this enterprise-wide transformation. It's going to be the biggest project that we have ever run." And I tossed your name, and I panic. I'm like, "What have you done? I cannot do that." So these advocates are basically pushing you because they know and they have seen what are you capable of, and they don't even ask you. They cheer you on and just help you move up in your career without you even noticing.
One of the things that was very helpful for me, because when I started, my male mentors were throwing me out to the lions to see what I could do. And I learned to come back and roar like a lioness at them. But one of the organizations that really helped me was the National Association of Women Business Owners, and I got involved on a national level, so that as I was in the 80s involved with them, I saw some marvelous women who had been fighting their way up like I had, but they were the Washington scene or the New York scene. And I was very fortunate that I was able to connect with them. And then I got involved in some government lobbying, and it was really, those women were absolutely heroic. So
And you mentioned something very important, JoAnn, and I want to add additional details to that. I think, to your point, Sal, early as possible in your career, you need to have a mentor of a series of mentor, whether that's a man or a woman, up to you, whatever you feel comfortable, because that has to be a true relationship based on trust, right? But as you continue to progress and about to reach mid-career, you really have to make time to network and to be part of certain organization. And something that I consistently hear in the organizations that I work with is, I don't have time. I don't know where these organizations are. I don't know where to start looking. And to me, that is a symptom of starting the beginning stages of disengagement. And if you want to be successful in your career, you have to have perspectives from people. And I love what you mentioned at a national level. You have to have perspective of how your industry is operating and looking, because you not necessarily at mid-career, you're not going to get paid to fill out the paperwork and send those emails. At mid-career, you're going to start to get paid to make decisions and influence the team to make better decisions. And influencing the team to make better decisions and make decisions is not going to come from doing the exact same thing that you have been doing for the longest time. You have to have perspective of other organizations, other type of roles that do something similar to what you're doing, to then influence those into your decision making and drive innovation. And innovation is nothing else than doing it different than what anyone has done it before, right? But you need to keep active, especially the more you separate from graduation time in college. I strongly recommend that at least once a year. At the beginning, I used to attend conferences once every 3 years. Later on, I started to attend once a year to keep fresh and to see what was coming out in the market.
Mhm.
Hey, let me ask you a question, Nation. I'm going to pose this starting off from maybe an engineering perspective, right? If you think about the absolute ideal scenario, ideal condition where um, there's no discrimination on anything, there's perfect equity on everything, whether it's gender, sexual orientation, race, whatever, and you define that absolutely ideal state as 100%. Okay, and I know we have salary surveys. Okay, but I want to make this even a broader than just a pure concept of pay equity, right? If 100% is an absolute ideal state, your gut feel, where are we right now?
I think there has been a lot of advancements, and I think there's way more ground to cover. Okay. Um, my personal belief is not going to be popular. My personal belief is that you cannot change how people think by talking. You have to change how people think of by doing and proving and addressing yourself. If I go into a preliminary meeting with my boss, especially in corporate America, as a consultant, there's more flexibility on that. But if I go to my boss and say, I have not, I need a raise because so and so is making more money than me, and I have not proven that I'm literally worth it to go through all the HR channels to change the policies and change the increased merits, because then in most companies you can only give this percent at a time and these others. So I have been a firm believer on documenting my accomplishments and documenting where I stand. And then in that evaluation time, which should be the wrap up of a series of conversations throughout the year, go with my full documentation and say, look, this is my salary. This is a person's salary on my role. And this is all the accomplishments that I have had over the last year that have made your life easier. So we are going to cover it, or literally, I'm going to go somewhere else that appreciate that type of work. But we cannot continue to have these conversations without action and without literally next steps, because we have been having inequity and diversity conversations ever since I can remember. And yes, there has been advancement and now people are more vocal about it, but there's so much ground to cover. And if you have seen these organizations all in social media saying that it would take us 200 years at this pace to achieve equity, that's scary. That's several generations. I do think that you have to state your worth, but no one is gonna say this is your worth without really seeing what you're all about. I have had many people come to me in other organizations. My boss wouldn't give me a raise, and the person basically have had a mediocre or below expectations evaluation for the last 5 years. Well, there's a give and take, right? I know this is not a popular conversation, but I truly believe that you have to demonstrate and then stand in your ground with the list of accomplishments behind your um, backing you up.
I absolutely agree with you. I have obtained my success because I've been willing to fight for it. I've been willing to step out of the box. I've been willing to argue, whatever it takes.
Absolutely.
Well,
And
I will tell you, by the way, as sometimes having to sit on the other side of the table, the only thing that's maybe a little painful and a little frustrating, and I think you alluded to this, especially again in these big, large, Fortune 500 companies, they may give you as a manager a budget for your salary increases for your department, and different times are different things, right? But I mean, sometimes they're as low as a 2% average, and that's
Yes.
an average. So I mean,
Yes.
some people may be getting that are superstars may be getting a 3 or 4, but that also means, and some people are literally getting nothing, a 0% or a half
Yeah.
a percent. Sometimes you even make a decision to give them nothing instead of a half a percent because there comes a point in time where it's insulting. Um, but
I
three or
hear
four
you.
percent is nothing to write home about. But again, for you as I'm even going to say a middle manager or even a staff manager within a real multinational, where this thing is coming from corporate because you're in the middle of a recession, you're not going to change that. So
And
that's a little frustrating.
I love what you said. I just love what you said. My particular organization was restricted to, I think it was that 2% a year over year increase, and that was a particular restriction. Um, However, holistically, I only had a percentage of my overall budget to distribute that 2%. And again, I'm not saying that it's fair. It's not. I'm not saying that. I'm not debating it. What I'm saying is arm your superiors with information so that they can fight on your behalf. That that's my only position on
And
that
by the
topic.
way, and maybe this is my vision or my philosophy too, if you like the organization, just because you don't get it this year because there's a 2% limit, because again, we're in a recession, whatever, doesn't mean that next year is not going to be better. They're going to have a little more flexibility, or even a year after that, if you're willing to wait,
Absolutely.
there may be a little more flexibility. So, you also have to balance, are you willing to wait? How much do you like the organization? And is the future going to be better? Sometimes you're in an organization that for whatever reason, it's just in a company or industry that's in secular decline, and you say, hey, you know what, this is never going to get better.
And
yeah,
that's a fantastic point, right? What are you doing it for? Are you doing your job because it pays the bills, or are you doing your job because you truly making a difference on something else, somewhere else, etc.? And if the second case is true, how is the culture of the organization supporting you in all of your endeavors? I work for a particular organization that they literally were incredibly resistant to change, and the culture was really really toxic. And then the next organization, yes, there were budget restrictions, but guess what? They will send me to every possible training that I could ask for during the year. They develop me. They actually assign me an executive coach, so that they really invested on my professional development. So at the end of the day, I love how you put it. You have to balance it out. What are you doing it for, and how is the company supporting or not supporting you, and make a determination, specifically in this job market where there's so many job opportunities all over the place.
we have been talking for a while. We're going to get you back. This has been fun. Um, but Sal and I were talking, and we were talking about our holidays, and considering everybody has traditions. Sal asked me to ask you because that's his, but I think because I love to cook and I am a good cook. And what are some as we, what are some of the traditions that you have brought from Puerto Rico that you incorporate food wise into?
Food wise, I'm a big cook at home. I think that's the only. There are two things that I have brought and I have kept intact as I came from Puerto Rico with my daughters and in our family home. Definitely the food. So. In our tradition, I don't eat meat, but I always cook my pork and rice and pigeon peas, arroz con gandules for Christmas. That's a staple and a tradition in every home in Puerto Rico. And God forbid that you say no to anyone that offers. So that has maintained intact. I always do that for the holidays, specifically for Christmas. Um, and then actually, we do celebrate the Epiphany, the Three Kings in Puerto Rico. And that is another tradition that I have kept intact. So ever since I have kids and they started school, if that holiday, which is January the 6th, if it fell during the weekday, they will not go to school and they will stay home, basically enjoying their presents and having some family time. So those are the top two that I would say. All the food is intact, like if you were in the deep end of Puerto Rico, and then the tradition of celebrating the Three Kings Day.
Okay.
Okay, so now
Let's do.
I'm going to do a quick test, JoAnn. I'm going to put you on the spot. See if you were paying
Oh boy.
attention. So in Puerto Rico, you celebrate Christmas with Santa Claus and you celebrate the Three Kings, right? Who comes first, Santa Claus or the Three Kings?
Well, that depends, though. Where are you standing? You can totally see I'm a consultant. So,
Historically, the Three Kings.
The Three Kings comes first because they come in January. Santa Claus comes
exactly.
in December. Oh, you
That's
guys
why
are
I say it
smart
depends
folks.
on where you're standing. If you're standing in December.
Right. That's
Uh,
right. Neysha, how does one get a hold of you, and how does one buy your book?
So the book is readily available in Amazon. So I think the best way is through either of my websites, either my personal website, neyshaarcelay.com, or my business website, and they both connect to each other, which is precisa.com, Precxa.com. And again, my name and my last name all together.com. Those two websites have all the information regarding my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, plus a link to get the book.
Okay. And Sal, how does one get a hold of you?
Okay, well, first of all, Sal Acosta, I'm a business broker. I help people buy and sell businesses and in my real sort of day job when I'm not doing these interviews. Get a hold of me is very easy. You can call me right on my personal cell phone. It's area code 484-358-9470. You can email me, Sal, S-A-L, 459 at yahoo.com, Sal, 459 at yahoo.com. I'm obviously on LinkedIn also, Sal, S-A-L, Acosta, A-C-O-S-T-A. And before we turn off, by the way, I want to say thank you to Neysha for being our guest today and for talking to us. Gosh, almost for an hour. This has been one of the longer interviews we've done, but again, we have a lot of material to cover. We could do a whole other session, by the way, just on Puerto Rican holidays. There's a lot of things she didn't talk about. One of my favorites is coquito, which
Oh,
is
yes.
sort of a Puerto Rican eggnog, for lack of a better term.
Mm.
But anyway, there's a lot of other stuff. But thank you for being our guest.
Oh, absolutely. Was very, very delighted to receive the invitation and to be here with you guys.
Yes. And I'm JoAnn Forrester, the Empress of Biz. You can get a hold of me at 412-440-6969. I have a couple businesses, Celebrate and Share, J.R. Forrester and Associates. And I am also a writer, author, and I'm president of the Pennsylvania Women's Hall of Achievement, which we have just done, and just going to get in there in the middle. The Women's Voices Hear Them Speak calendar which is the 2020 edition, which is highlighting 12 significant women from Pennsylvania, from
That's
past to
wonderful.
present. And our goal is um, to establish a permanent presence of recognizing women in their position in history. So
That's wonderful.
That's what I love to do. And we have a Facebook presence, Empress of Biz, Listen, Learn, Prosper. We also have the Pennsylvania Women's Hall of Achievement. And if you want to find out all the other things I get into, 412-440-6969. I want to wish everyone a good holiday season.
Thank you
And
so much.
and today is Giving Tuesday. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm supporting our local church food bank. And there is what's called a reverse Advent. Instead of you going in and taking some candy or something, gifts out of a calendar, I'm filling up a box each day with filling up a box with one item so that I'll have 24 items or more that I will take to church on Christmas Eve, and supporting the local food bank. And I invite people to do that. The need is so great. And that is something that we can do, and you can actually see where it goes.
That is wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you all. Don't forget our Friday the 13th, Business Horror Stories. Are you going to wear your favorite costume, Sal?
No, I am not. For the record, Neysha, I actually made like a little flyer, and JoAnn said, "No, no, 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 you got to tone it down. You're going to scare everybody." So what's out there on the internet is the more sort of friendly, toned down version that JoAnn helped me with. The
That's so
original,
funny.
I guess, maybe was a little bit scary, but we are bringing a bankruptcy lawyer for that
Okay.
interview. So. We're certainly not going to be short of business horror stories. So if anybody's interested, Friday, December the 13th, we'll be getting that publicity out there on LinkedIn and Facebook and so on and so forth. So if you want to get scared from a business perspective, come join us.
Well, thank
Awesome.
you.
A must. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.